Hey, my name's Jessie, and this is the story of when my mom called the police on my dad. Forewarning, this story might trigger some people, so if you have a hard time talking about sexual abuse, you don't need to watch this one. Here goes. So, my mom left when I was 3. It was heartbreaking, but my dad always took care of us. He had to change careers, go back to school, and move us into our grandma's house. My dad said that he was working on a situation to get us into our own house soon. Shortly after my mom left us, my dad started drinking again. Heavily. He blacked out several times a week. He would miss work, and he ended up getting fired. Sometimes he'd forget to make us food. We'd have to get ourselves ready for school. Alcohol to him was like a poison. But it didn't just affect him. It affected all of us. One day, I got really sick with the flu. Whenever I was sick, Dad would let me stay in his bed. He had to work that day, so I was home alone all day. I waited for my dad to get home, but he didn't. I guess that night he went out with some friends. I was just 9 at the time, so I thought that he was just staying late at work. I had fallen asleep in his bed and was still there when he came home. It was in the middle of the night. That night changed my relationship with him forever. That night, he molested me. I remember him calling me the name of his then girlfriend, so I guess he was so drunk that he didn't know it was me. But that didn't ease the pain I felt. The next day, I told him what happened. And this is the only time I've ever seen my dad break down. He couldn't stop apologizing. However, to this day, he swears he doesn't even remember that the incident happened. I guess I should explain. The woman that he was dating was our neighbor, and she had a daughter who was my age, Kylie. For a little while, we were best friends. No, more like sisters. But after her mom and my dad broke up, in a sense, so did she and I. In the following 5 years, my dad sobered up through rehab. At that point, I was 14 years old. We moved away to a nearby town, and I tried to forget the unstable, lonely hell that was my preteen years. I don't ever think I'm going to fully heal from those years. But at the time, I was 14 and finally allowed to have social media and my own smartphone. My first initiative was to reconnect with my old best friend, and in turn her mother. We rekindled our relationship, and I was happy for a little while. Things were starting to get better again. But, of course, one day that all tanked. Kylie hadn't talked to me in a couple of weeks, and I was starting to get worried. Did her mom take her phone? Did I do something wrong? After, I think, almost 3 weeks, she finally called me, but she seemed sad and scared. She said she couldn't talk to me anymore, and she didn't want to tell me why. I reassured her that she could trust me. So she told me. She had had a similar experience with my dad. One night, she was staying at my house, and he used some extremely inappropriate language with her. Nothing physical, but still awful. And she had finally come to terms with it now. So when she did, she told her mom. Her mom was furious and told her to stop talking to me. Me? I'm not the one who did anything wrong. I tried to talk her out of cutting me off, but it didn't really work. She thought I didn't believe her. Of course I did. It happened to me too. But nobody knew that. I kept that to myself. And so we grew apart again. I needed to vent to someone. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go to my grandma's as we had just moved far away from her. I didn't want to call the cops because I'd lose my dad. So I contacted my mom. I was only going to tell her about what my friend had said, but I was so stressed out that I started to tell her about him molesting me. She sat there in silence for a moment, and then she said she'd call me back. A couple of minutes later, she texted me that she had called the cops on my dad. She thought I was still being abused. Verbally and emotionally, yes. My dad always had a bad temper, but sexually, no. And I didn't want to lose my home and the stability it only just gained. But in retrospect, Mom did the right thing. So when the investigator came, I was scared. I'm not a good liar. But My dad was supportive and told me to tell the truth. But I didn't want to lose him or my home, so I lied. I feel awful about it to this day. 3 years later, I'm almost 18 now, and I'm doing better. We've moved twice since then for my dad's work, and I love the new state we live in. I've been working on school, getting in shape, and, well, actually I do music now. Don't worry, this isn't some elaborate scheme to sell my mixtape. My dad and I are working on things, and I hope to still talk to my dad when I graduate from high school and move out. I think what I gathered from this whole experience is good people can do awful things and make horrible mistakes from time to time. And I'd only be doing myself a disservice if I cut my parents out of my life. If I lost my dad, I wouldn't have all my recent memories of us getting ice cream, going to look at sea lions, watching movies, and having long philosophical conversations. I've finally gotten back to hugging him again. I love hugs, and I'm glad I'm okay enough now to trust my dad to hug me back. Do you have any similar stories? Share below if you feel comfortable. I plan to respond to the comments, and please be kind and supportive. Thank you for listening.